On behalf of Chapin Memorial Library, the Friends of Chapin Memorial Library, the City of Myrtle Beach, and our two significant guests here this evening, thank you for coming out tonight. You don't have to.
Hi, everybody. I'm Martina Corley, and I just wanted to thank you on behalf of Friends of Chapin Library and for sharing my passion for Myrtle Beach history. Thank you very much.
I'm Mark Crua from the City of Myrtle Beach, and I recognize about a third of the room in person, honestly. Lots of distinguished guests here. I will not try to name them all, but pick a couple out. I saw current City Councilman Bill McClure in the back, a couple of former City Council people, John Crutch and Mary Jeffcoat. I'm probably missing folks. Senator Luke Rankin is over here. Former Congressman Robin Talon is in the audience. Sally Howard is here. Thank you all again for coming out tonight. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing two people who need no introduction. The Thompson brothers, they're not related, obviously. Jack Thompson and Dino Thompson, and as I've talked about them on radio and in various other formats lately, I've talked about them as very precocious youngsters, and they both grew up to be very precocious grown-ups. Y'all are grown up yet? If you haven't read Dino Thompson's books, Greek Boy was his first one. Dino's a restaurateur of long standing here in the Myrtle Beach area, so we appreciate him being here. Jack Thompson is our photographic historian. Jack's been taking pictures of Myrtle Beach for 70 years, give or take. 70 years? That's just almost 70 years. That's really hard to imagine. Actually, more than 70 years, probably.
Hitchhiking down at 13.
I know.
Picked up a camera and...
I don't know what else to say other than thank you again for being here. How many of you, I do have a question for you. How many of you have lived here less than 20 years? Raise your hand. Less than 20 years. Ooh, that's more than I expected. All right, how many of you lived here less than 10 years? Less than 5 years? Less than 20 minutes? I also want to point out that Carolyn Mates is here, and she and Russ Mates are the next guests in the Through the Lens of Time history series over at Chapin Memorial Library, which is coming up middle of February 21st maybe? February 21st at 2 o'clock over at Chapin Library, and I know that a lot of you have been here for that as well. So anyway, without me chatting any further, we're going to learn a tremendous amount about the Ocean Forest Hotel here in Myrtle Beach. I'm going to turn it over to Jack and Dino to take it away, guys. Here you go. Thanks.
Well, Mark, if you can stand, I think I can stand. I'd like to see these faces of all these beautiful people out here. Thank you for coming tonight and braving the weather. Coming to see Dino. Okay. Yes, I would like to mention something that Mark alluded to. Yes, Jack Thompson hitchhiked down here when he was 13 with Carol Campbell and Freddie Collins. And on our way, we kind of got lost and we were headed toward Beaufort. And Carol and Freddie said, "Hey, Beaufort's a beautiful place. Let's go on down there." I said, "No, I feel a calling for Myrtle. So we're going to Myrtle Beach." And we did, and we landed and had a big time, and the rest is history. But I had a dream the other night, and I wasn't going to say this, but after A Wonderful Life, the movie was on, I woke up in a cold sweat thinking, what if I had not come to Myrtle Beach? 100,000 pictures would disappear.
Yeah, and a million memories.
But I'm glad I came, and I'm glad I stayed, and I'm glad I photographed most of you and a lot of you when you were kids. So with that ado, I'll turn the mic over to Dino.
Well, we went to Florida, stopped for lunch in Myrtle Beach, never made it to Florida. I was 4 months old. I was in a bassinet in the back, and we came down. It quit.
Hello, check 1, 2, test, 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 test.
See?
Okay.
Hello? Sorry. Anyway, we stopped at the Cozy Corner Cafe, and where Winna's is now. And it was 1946. We were in a 1940 LaSalle. Everything we owned was in there, including me in the back. And stopped for lunch. Another Greek named Tom Haley was running the place. Pretty fast talker. My old man said, we're going to Florida. We're going to start a life, start a business. And he said, you can buy this place. It's ready to go. Buy the lease. And we did. Mr. Hobika owned the building. And 2 hours after we stopped, along with the lease, the apartment 1 went with it. 2.5 hours later, we were moving into apartment 1. Dad was introducing himself to the cooks and the waitresses. We were living here, and we had a job. And I remember years later, Mr. Inhabitant came in Flamingo Grill, and he said, he was a sweet man with a very southern voice. He said, Dino, I read your book. I said, yes, sir. He said, it was right funny. He said, I always thought you was born here. I said, no, I came here when I was 4 months old. He said, yeah, I read that part, and he walked away. So while he was eating, I went over there and I said, Mr. Nevin, I came here as soon as I could. But anyway, we'll talk about the ocean forest, if this thing will work.
I'm not the secret to this. Hello, check 1, 2. Hold it down at the bottom, maybe.
At the bottom. Hold it at the bottom. Anyway, Jack's gonna start us off, and this is Colonel Springs.
Yes, I would like to mention that the true hero of the Ocean Forest Hotel, and actually the development of Myrtle Beach, was General Springs. General Holmes B. Springs.
They're picky. Hold it to the bottom. And
Hold it from the bottom.
There you go.
General Springs, he was from Bucksport, Bucksdale, went to the Citadel. That class didn't graduate because somebody was saber fighting and the cadets wouldn't tell who it was. The president of the college said nobody's graduating this year. So a lot of those students and cadets had to go to smaller colleges, and Colonel Springs, he went to Presbyterian and graduated with a master in business and went in the Army and rose up real quick to a colonel. Actually, his claim to fame in the Army was he was the one that chased Pancho Villa back across the Mexican border. And for that, he became a general. He came back home and went into the banking business in Greenville, South Carolina, yes, and became a partner with the Woodside Brothers of Greenville. And the Woodside Brothers were big entrepreneurs in Greenville. They built the world's largest cotton mill, the Woodside Mills, in Greenville. Colonel Springs talked them into coming down and seeing Myrtle Beach, to see what Myrtle Beach had to offer. And that first weekend, they got in a T-model Ford and drove to Myrtle Beach. Must have took quite a while to get here. On that first weekend in Myrtle Beach, they were so amazed, they wanted to know who owns this beautiful paradise. And he told them, well, the Burroughs family and Simeon Chapin. So he said, well, we want to meet them. They met that first weekend. John T. Woodside bought Myrtle Beach, 165,000 acres.
Now, he bought
immediately-
66,000 acres.
I'm sorry.
66,000 acres.
Okay.
104 square miles.
Yeah. Be sure to stand there and correct me anytime.
No, I apologize. I apologize. But you think about 104 square miles. They bought 12 and a half miles of ocean front. That means they bought 8 miles inland. So they owned almost everything that you know that's Carolina Forest, Broadway at the beach, 8 miles inland, 12 and a half miles long. Sorry.
That is correct. Thank you. I keep referring to General Springs because he was a general. He came into Myrtle Beach, and the Woodsides tapped him to be the president of Myrtle Beach Estates. And you've often seen that little building on the curve on the highway there.
Your mic's going again.
Hello. So anyway, he became president of Myrtle Beach State and reached out and hired Trez Wilcox. Some of you remember Trez Wilcox was the secretary and then became the city judge. But Trez is the fellow who wrote most all of the public pamphlets, newspaper articles, telling the story about Myrtle Beach. So we give Trez a lot of credit for attracting a lot of attention to Myrtle Beach.
He used to write this called the Myrtle Leaf, and that was kind of our first newspaper, and Trez was instrumental in writing most of the stories.
That's right. So you take it from here, Dino.
Well, when people don't realize how extraordinary the vision that these 4 gentlemen had. They didn't intend just to build a hotel. They intended to build the most complete haven for rest and recreation in the world. Now, when you talk about 104 square miles, 66,000 acres, Charles Fraser bought Hilton Head. It's a big deal. That was 20,000 acres. What they intended to do, they were going to build communities, winding trails through the forest, through the beach. They built a 27-hole golf course, which is Pine Lakes today. They had 12 clay tennis courts. They had a riding stable that housed 30 horses, so people could rent a horse, and they had 10, 15 miles of riding trails. They had skeet and trap shooting. They were going to build a beach house. They were going to build a golf course for ladies because boys didn't want you girls playing golf with them back then. And they had a lot of things that were for men and women. They looked on women as just as important as men back then. And the ocean forest was just one of the jewels. And one of the things that, these are the fantastic wood sides. This is a great article. This is a book that is the promotional brochure for their project. Hardback book, and it's beautifully written. The prose is gorgeous. And the pictures are done by, not many people realize what an important figure this man was. This is a conceptual drawing by Raymond Hood. When you get home, Google him. He did the prologue for the book. He was one of the most important high-rise architects in the world. He did the Radiator Building in New York, the McGraw-Hill Building, the News Building, the Rockefeller Center. He was the lead architect for all 16 buildings, the RCA Building, the Chicago Tribune Building. He was a pioneer in rooftop gardens, and he was the man that the Woodside brothers contacted to be their initial architect. He died at 53, and he was finishing up the Rockefeller Center. He didn't see the complete finish because he died. So they didn't get to use him as the architect. They had a new architect who adapted some of his conceptual drawings, which is fantastic. You can see this. We used to call the hotel the Wedding Cake Hotel, the Castle on the Ocean, $1 million hotel because it cost more than $1 million in 1926.
Dino, tell us where that location was going to be. Arcady.
Arcady was the name of the project that they chose. It's a Greek word which means a perfect place for men to meditate and rest in a natural surroundings. It sort of means an Eden or a perfect place to live. And that's how philosophical these gentlemen were and spiritual. They were quite spiritual men.
They found the ideal place for Arcady at the Miyababa property. 500 acres, beautiful, pristine property was going to be Arcady.
This is one of their Mr. Raymond Hood's conceptual drawings. This was going to be the open air theater, which they did build an open air theater. You can see it's right here on the south side of the hotel, an acoustically correct theater where Harry James came a couple times, Woody Herman, Spike Jones, Count Basie came in the 30s with Billie Holiday. They played there for a white crowd, and that night they went to Charlie's Place in what we called Colored Town back then, and they played at Charlie's Place, Billie Holiday and Count Basie. But all the great big bands played there. My dad and mom went there on their anniversary to see Harry James. This is a picture of Raymond Hood. But Google him when you get home. He was an important figure. This is some of the work he did. This is the Radiator Building. Some people say absolutely the most beautiful building in New York. The close-ups are incredible. This is an interior of the News Building, a huge globe that revolved. That's the RCA Building. And this is the myrtle leaf that Mr. Wilcox used to write. That was our newspaper. A very early picture here. There's nothing here, nothing here. Calvin Road was finished. This one wasn't even finished.
Poinsett.
Yeah, Poinsett. The reason that's named Poinsett is the Woodside brothers had built the Poinsett Hotel in 1925 in Greenville for $1.5 million. It's still there, it's renovated, it's beautiful, it's working. They also had the tallest building in South Carolina, the Woodside Brothers Bank, 17 stories. They had several other small banks, and in 1922 they moved into the 17-story Woodside Brothers Bank. Here's a great picture. This might be one of Jack's. Is this one of yours?
Yeah, that's one of my shots. And that is the senior day, Myrtle Beach High School. They were having a great time, and I was up in a sheet metal airplane taking that picture.
Here's a swimming pool, the outdoor amphitheater. It was acoustically correct. And when the big bands came, a lot of people couldn't afford the admission, or either they didn't have the clothes, and back then you could drive on the beach. So they would park right here in front of the beach and dance to the music. You could hear it perfectly. And there'd be 200 people, dancing to Harry James.
Ocean Forest Country Club up there.
That's right. And here's a picture of a good-looking guy. I don't know who it is.
There was a time when I had hair.
And he worked at Skip's back in the day, and Dwight Lamb was the man that gave him a job at 13 and taught him how to be the greatest photographer we met in Horry County.
Well, I might tell that story.
I'll go back.
When I was in high school working at Skip's studio, Mr. Lamb got tired of shooting conventions at the hotel, so every night, or every day after I developed all the drugstore film, we had 6 drugstores downtown. It was my job to go around and pick up the roll film, tourist film, take it back in and develop it, and then the next morning we'd print it, and then I would deliver it at school. And at 6 o'clock, Dwight Lamb would take me to the Ocean Forest Hotel and drop me off. And he'd say, "Now listen, dummy, don't forget to pull the slide." The big 4x5 camera had a plate holder, and when you got it focused, you had to pull the slide to expose the film when you took the picture. The day before, the city had bought a new fire truck and had parked it out in front of City Hall right at the back of Skip's studio. And Skip, Mr. Lamb, said, "Jackie, I want you to go take a picture for the newspaper." Oh, my first picture. So I ran out and got everything set up, knelt down and shot that picture. And he said, "Come on in here and develop that. We've got to get it to the newspaper." And I went in a dark room and I developed the film and turned on the light and it was clear. I had forgot to pull the slide. So anyway, from then on, a lot of times when I went out to do a job, he would say a little note on the back of the plate holder, "Dummy, pull the slide." So that was a wonderful time.
This is where we stopped for lunch, 1946. That's my mom's Buick. And this is a Budweiser truck. And probably Spud Spadoni was delivering beer to my dad back then. He later ended up owning the company. But at that time, he was a truck driver. And that's me standing in the front.
I said, "What flavor is that ice cream?" Obviously vanilla.
Hurricane Hazel took this sign somewhere to North Carolina. We never knew where it landed.
Anyway, regarding that photograph, Angie, Dino's mom, he had that Dairy Queen ice cream cone. And he was dripping that ice cream all over the floor, and Angie said, "Get out of here with that ice cream." So she made him go out and stand by the door while he enjoyed that ice cream.
Here you can see there's not much. There's the Ocean Forest. Very little going on back then. Here's one of the billboards. That's Highway 501 from Conway heading into Myrtle Beach. Here's an old brochure. It's pretty interesting to read. Here's one of Jack's pictures of a convention. Look at all the luggage.
Yes, thank you. Most of these black and white wonderful classic pictures are Jack Thompson photographs.
Yes, they are.
And this was checking out day. We had just had the Continental Can Company's convention, 500 conventioners, and they were checking out that day, and that's what it looked like. They had a lot of business meetings in a room off of the ballroom called the Peacock Alley. And on this occasion, they were breaking for lunch.
See these balustrades here? These are all hard cypress, and they went all along the porches outside. Here's two of them. These are from the ocean forest. When they were demolishing the ocean forest, my partner and I, Dino Thompson, we were in there tearing out things. I gave Mr. Hudgens and Company, it's a company that had the demolition contract, $2,000, and he just said, go in there and get what you want. But he did charge me $90 a run for these dividers. They were about six feet long, and we bought all of them. Now, we used a bunch in Cagney's, but we didn't use them all. And there was a little lady from Atlanta in there, and she wanted some, and Mr. Hudgens said, that fellow bought them all. So she said, you want to sell them? I said, no, I don't know how many I'm going to need. This was 1974. We didn't build Cagney's for 2 years. We didn't open for 2 years. So we opened Cagney's, and about a year or two later, we decided to go to Atlanta to see her shop. She had a huge architectural shop. I walked in, and there was one of these runs about 6 feet long and had a big tag on it that said sold. So I walked up to the fellow and I said, where did you get that? Where did you get that? He said, very flamboyant. And he started telling me all about the Ocean Forest Hotel. And I said, it's fascinating. And I said, how much was it? And he said, $1,950. And I stared at it and I thought, I'm in the wrong damn business. I sold them for $100. They sold them for $1,950. Anyway.
So when I got there, Dino had cleaned the place out. There was nothing left. I got to take something home. Fella said, maybe you ought to go in the ladies' powder room. So I went in the ladies' powder room, and the wraparound walls were mirrors. And I said, I'll take them. So I had some help, took down all the window mirrors in the ladies' powder room, and we were building a house in Pine Lakes, and put the mirrors in the house, in the master bath. Went on to Mason at North. Told me later that they were getting ready to sell the house, but the buyer wouldn't buy the house unless they left the mirrors. So wonderful historic tidbit.
Here's a story from Jack here. Tell him whose car that is.
The local JCs were having the state convention at the hotel, and we had a raffle giveaway of 1954 Cadillac. We didn't have a Cadillac. Mr. Collins of Collins Department Store loaned us his Cadillac, and Marcus Smith and a couple of the guys were polishing it up.
Shining it up. And this is a convention photo, 1947. I think that was a group of, it says a Southern Life Insurance Company. Just, you can see the chandeliers and the pilasters. They had gold leaf caps on them. This was a commemorative plate that was designed for the ocean forest, a beautiful plate they were planning to use. I don't know if they ever actually put it in use, but Jack made some plates.
Privilege.
Please do.
I produced that first plate, and it was beautiful. It was called a presidential plate. And I kept number one. Dave Grandstaff and I produced that plate, and we sold 1,000 of them for $100 a piece. But I kept number one, and I had it on the counter in the studio. And one day these two lovely ladies came in, were so enamored with that, picked it up and immediately dropped it. Took a big chunk out of right here. She said, "I'll pay for it." I said, "It's priceless. You can't pay for it."
Yeah.
Anyway,
Here's a beautiful ice
someone else
carving.
picked the idea up and went on and produced another.
It's one of their conventions. Some people eating. These are small chandeliers. They had some really huge chandeliers in the lobby. A gentleman from Texas came through when they were selling things off, and he had a beautiful coat on and boots and a hat. He bought 6 of the large chandeliers. They were about 14 feet deep and about 14 feet wide. He bought them for $25,000 a piece. They were made by one of the finest crystal makers from Czechoslovakia, and he knew who it was. And I remember I walked up and said, "Do you have a string of hotels, sir?" And he said, "No, I just got a several homes, son." I said, "Okay." Here's some of the staff, and tell them who one of the members of that staff is.
One of these young men went on to become South Carolina Supreme Court Judge, Alfred Finney, Finney, Finney.
Not sure which one it is, but he's in the picture.
Well, I just
I'm sorry,
spotted
I'll go back.
right here. Albert Finney went
That's
on
Albert.
to become a judge, Supreme
The-
Court Judge in South.
The first
I
African
mean, you
American
remember
judge.
it.
Yeah.
You too, Luke.
Here's an old. They used to do the painted postcards back then. They did beautiful jobs. You can see the bathing suits. These are in the 20s. And this is in the 20s too. It's kind of a strange postcard. Jack and I haven't seen this one too much. They're showing the Pine Lakes in the background there. And here's one showing Calhoun. And the Woodside brothers built those streets, and they made them out of concrete, 8-inch concrete. They lasted 40-some years. Yeah. Here's another aerial shot, postcard, the roundabout. And they're trying to build a monument there at the roundabout. Reuben Hyman and Mazingo are having something done there. Hopefully it'll get done. The city's giving them a bunch of money. Tennis courts over here. The outdoor marine patio there. On top of the ocean forest was a working lighthouse. It was used for dead reckoning navigation by airplanes and ships at the time. Another shot. Jack and I lived through Hurricane Hazel. Hazel destroyed a great piece of Myrtle Beach and North Myrtle Beach. It came in about Briarcliff, the eye. On the good side was a 14-foot surge because it hit on dead high tide and it hit on the highest king tide of the year in October. So it was an 18-foot surge on the bad side, and it annihilated Windy Hill, North Myrtle Beach, all the North Myrtle Beach, all the North Carolina beaches. If they had 400 houses, there'd be 2 left. It killed 1 person in South Carolina, 23 in North Carolina, about 30 in Virginia, about 30-some in Maryland, killed some in Washington, D.C. They had 100-mile-an-hour winds. It killed almost 60 people in New York City, in New York, and it killed about 120 in Nova Scotia. It just wouldn't quit. It was a terrible storm. But it didn't hurt the ocean forest because it sat on a 30-foot plateau, and it was fireproof and hurricane-proof. Here's a beautiful night shot. Go back to that. You don't have to whisper.
Yeah, that's good. I was gonna ask you to come right back here so I can see you better, and then Egerton and his lady can see the screen.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Sorry.
Let me interrupt and say that the Ocean Forest Hotel was situated exactly halfway between New York and Miami. And the big bands during that day, the 30s and 40s, before the big airlines started flying, they traveled in little cavalcade cars, little wooden station wagons, and they would stop over at the Ocean Forest Hotel. And for room and board, they would play at the marine patio. And you could hear that beautiful music from the leading bands, Tex Beneke and all those wonderful bands of that era.
I mean, most of the great big bands played there. I mean, the greatest music in the world.
That music drifting through the air in Myrtle Beach, serenading the 200 residents that we had at that time.
When the Woodside Brothers came here, we had 200 people. This is the outdoor patio, and you could see it's acoustically correct, and they were getting ready to stage something here. Behind it were dressing rooms. That's my old man having an illegal drink in 1953. There were only a few places. We all know who they were. The Behringers, the Oasis, the Ocean Forest, Charlie's Place, maybe Eli Saleeby's restaurant. Sold liquor. You weren't supposed to sell it. But Dad used to like to go up and have an illegal VO. And sometime we'd go in the Brookgreen Room, which was a beautiful bar overlooking the ocean. Roy McCormick was one of the managers for years. And the first time Dad took me there, I was 6. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching Eduardo Roy, the strolling violinist. He used to wear these Liberace type jackets. I was fascinated with those. And he's strolling through the bar, and the cocktail waitress said, "What can I get you, honey?" And my dad said, "Bring him a cocktail with milk." So they brought me a brandy Alexander. So I had a brandy Alexander, and the next time we went, when the cocktail waitress came up, I said, "I'd like a brandy Alexander, hold the nutmeg."
Don't forget about Roy McCormick.
Yeah. And here's a shot. Here you can see the acoustically correct amphitheater. And the Woodside Brothers loved everything white. Everything in Pine Lakes was white. The Ocean Forest was white. Here's a shot Jack took of one of the conventions. They hired some belly dancers.
After dinner.
And some of the after-dinner entertainment was offered by Miss Hazel from Georgetown from Sunset Lodge. All the desk clerks had her number, and when they had conventions, some of her classy ladies would come up and amuse some of the conventioneers. If you don't know who Miss Hazel is, just ask anybody that lives here. They'll tell you all about it. There's another shot of the lobby that Jack took. They had a beautiful mailbox. I tried to buy it. It was about this big. Had a big eagle on it. It said United States Post Office. It was copper and brass. And I remember I didn't have a lot of money then, and I offered $2,000, and somebody bought it for $5,500. I often wonder where it is, but it was gorgeous. It was every floor had a little mailbox, and you drop your mail in it. All of it went down in this. Which one? The postman would come and empty it every day. Here's another shot of the cooks. I recognize one. Here's a shot here of the same picture right here I bought from Jack. Y'all should buy this. It's a great shot. This is what we call the bullpen. Employee quarters. You could park underneath. Girls on one side, boys on the other. And we call it the bullpen. It was six-sided. And sometimes anybody that grew up here, Bo will tell you that, Carolyn, if nothing was going on, you drive in there and you listen for music. And if you heard a lot of music, you walk up there and there'd be a bunch of bartenders and waitresses having a party, and you kind of join the party.
And
But
back in the day, they brought the horses over, the horses kept over at Pine Lakes, Ocean Forest Country. They had a stable over there, and they kept a number of, they brought them over here for the guests to ride horses up and down the beach. And there was no city ordinance to tell them they could not do that.
this is the circle we're talking about. Hopefully they're going to put something there about the ocean forest, which is long overdue. Aerial shot by none other than Mr. Jack. Swimming pool. Now they had a saltwater swimming pool indoors. It was bigger than this room, the saltwater pool, and it was all tile. And we used to sneak in, me, Carrie Durant, PG. We'd sneak in and one would get on one end, one would get on the other. We would talk like this and we could hear each other, and we thought that was amazing because it was just nothing but solid tile. So you could take a hot water bath, a cold water bath, or a salt water bath. These are the actual, one says hot, cold, salt. Back in the 20s, people thought salt was a panacea for everything, you know.
What'd you say that was made of?
What?
What's that made of?
Porcelain.
Looks like ceramic, but it's
Yeah, it's porcelain.
porcelain.
Yeah. Now Jack will tell you too about, they had a wonderful theater. They hired Jane Barry Haynes from North Carolina, who was an actress and a theater manager, and she opened up Summer Stock Theater, and it was called a Theater in the Round. Every seat was perfect, and it was the only theater in the round on the East Coast at the time. I was a bellhop. Cozy Corner was very slow after Labor Day, so Dad would drive me up there, drop me off. I became a busboy, and then I was a bellhop when they needed, so I took room service to Vicki Cummings, Brian Donlevy, Tuesday Weld, John Payne, John Ireland, Bert Lahr, Veronica Lake. I told Dad, I used to make a quarter, you know, they'd get two club sandwiches, they'd give you 15 cents, 20 cents, because the sandwich was 45 cents. So I went to Diana Barrymore's room. She drank quite a bit. All the Barrymores drank, even Drew. Anyway, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I'm 11, and I got my little starched white jacket on, my black pants, and my bow tie, and you got a tray, and you can't just set it down. You have to put everything down and set the silverware down. And she has nothing on, and she's standing there like this in front of a mirror. And somebody's under the cover. Somebody's got the sheet pulled over. Well, I usually make 15, 20, 30 cents a room, and she gives me a $5 bill. That's like $10,000 now. So I go home and I'm counting all my money. Dad comes to pick me up, and I get back to the apartment over the cozy corner, and I got my quarters and my dimes and my nickels, a couple halves lined up, and 2 ones and a 5. And Dad says, "Who the hell did you rob?" And I said, "A woman gave me $5, and she was buck naked." And my dad was Greek, and he didn't know exactly what I meant. And I said, "She was naked, Dad. She was standing there covering herself like this." And he said, "Well, what the hell kind of place are they running there?" He said, "If that woman calls you again, you call me, and I'll take the room service." I don't know what I did in my clicker. Yes. Yeah. This is something we salvaged from the ocean forest. We put in Cagney's old place. This has plaster gold leaf up there. These are all cypress, beautiful stuff. We dipped them and took the white paint off of them, and they're still there. I left them there. I didn't want to tear them out. Yes. I'm sorry. Hold the mic near your mouth. This is the doorway to Cagney's we used. It was the ocean forest. We had a pulpit and this is something we got Tommy Simpson and an artist from Wilmington, a set artist, to come down and do a mural in Cagney's of the ocean forest. We call that the little Cagney's room. And Jack saved these. Tell them what those were.
Yes, thank you. I might mention that a couple of things that were left, aside from the mirrors. I noticed that the front door was still there. And these little stone, I made bookends out of them, but they held up the front door of the ocean forest. And I got a little crowbar and I wedged them out of there, took them home and made
They're
bookends.
They're perfect for that. And these are just some keys from the ocean forest. This picture, the bulldozers had knocked everything down but the tallest part. This was wired for implosion. And here's the lighthouse sitting on the ground at the time. It was a working lighthouse for dead reckoning navigation for years. And that was the last part to go down.
Made out of brass.
Yeah. And this is a picture Skeeter Nash gave me. He took while he was fishing from the ocean. And here's another picture of Jack's. And here's a newer picture of the pool in the front in color. And in '63, the new owners didn't want to paint it anymore, and they sandblasted it. People thought this was the newer version, but this is the older version of the ocean forest. So from '63 to '74, this is what it looked like. They just took the paint off.
Yeah, that was Milton Bachner from New York, came down and bought the hotel.
And this is just a colorized version of it, but these were copper topped and copper. And then in a couple years after they sandblasted, they built some motel in the front here just to get more rooms. Jack and I didn't like that. I remember both of us thought that was kind of blasphemy. There's another brochure. This is
The Cavalier.
the Cavalier in Virginia Beach. Jack and I both know that railroad people built this. Textile people built the ocean forest. They were having a battle to see who was going to open the first. The Cavalier opened in 27. This has been renovated and beautiful. The ocean forest could be the same. But it's gone, but it could have been that. That's a picture that Jack took. He's got a series of it coming down.
The newspaper article, and it'll probably come up shortly. It took 6 years to build the ocean forest and 6 seconds to bring it down. I got all 6 pictures.
If some of you people might have heard that they had to tear it down, they did not have to tear it down. Hudgens and Company, they're still in business in Atlanta. I had a pancake house at the time, and he was 6'5", and he walks in and he says, "My name's Bill Hudgens. You've got a hole up there. I had leased some land when I was in college where Cagney's was going to be. But I had a hole when they built the highway there, and I didn't have the money to fill it in. It would cost $30-some thousand worth of dirt I didn't have. Anyway, so I was trying to get a loan, and I couldn't get a loan for 6.5 years. He walks in and he says, "You got a hole up there on some property you have, and I want to fill it in for you." And I just smiled and I said, why would you want to do that for me? I said, "You want to put a bunch of tree stumps in there?" And he said, "No, I'm going to put broken brick and broken concrete, and I'll fill in the voids with dirt, and I'll grade it to your specifications. And when I leave, you'll say, 'That was one fine son of a bitch.'" That's what he said. And I laughed and I said, why you want to do this? He said, "Because it'll save me several $100,000 traveling, wear and tear." That's when I found out they were going to demolish the ocean forest, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "You're kidding." And we tried to talk, and then I went to see Sonny and Dexter, and we couldn't talk them out of it. They had already been done. But he told me that it had, some people said it was sinking. Mr. Hudgens said it wasn't sinking. He said it hadn't moved. He said it was the finest constructed building he'd ever examined for demolition. And he told me that for $350,000, we went and ate oysters together, him and 3 of his men. He said, "For $350,000, I can gut the interior, take the 202 rooms out." There were 60 more rooms at the Pine Lakes you could stay. And then the outside just needs a little TLC. And then we could make the lobby smaller, the rooms bigger. And then you have bought the property for $5.5 million, $350,000 more, $7 million to build new rooms. And he said, "You've got a brand new hotel for less than $12 million. I don't know why he knew all this. And then he said, "Compare it to the one they're building on 71st Avenue, a Sheraton on an acre and a quarter of land, 200 rooms for $12.5 million. He said, "Which one would you rather have? The ocean forest renovated on 12.5 acres of land?" And then this is the demolition man telling me this. "And once you did that, you'd have $10 million worth of free advertising, because every travel writer in the country would want to come back and do a story on the renovation of the Ocean Forest Hotel, which is essentially the beginning, our beginning." So this is the demolition guy telling me this. But it went down, and Jack has these famous pictures. And this is a little film of it going down. Will this play, Jennifer? Anyway, a local lady gave me this, and it shows it falling down. It's kind of sad to look at it, so maybe we won't look. Y'all have any questions, Jack, and I'll try to answer. Yes? Well, Egerton can tell you that better, but they kind of ran out of money. Yeah. Hold it on the bottom.
I have two stories to tell you about the building. One, a long, long time ago, my uncle used to be the sheriff of Horry County. And this goes back to the time when they were serving no liquor up there. And his aunt came to town, Aunt Lella, and he took her out to have a nice meal and a drink of good liquor, served in style. So they went over to the ocean forest, and when he walked in and sat down, they knew him right away. They said, we don't serve liquor here. And Uncle Don said, well, I know you do, and I'm off duty, and this is my sister, and I want a drink. They said, you can't have one, we don't sell liquor here. Well, if anyone knew Uncle Don, he got a little upset. He and Aunt Lella, they left. He got on the telephone, they didn't have a radio right then, and he called his deputies, and they came over, and they brought their horses. In those days, the sheriff's department had horses. They would bust up liquor stills and a lot of things. So when the deputies got over there, one of them was Ben Long. He worked for Burroughs and Collins forever. He said they surrounded the hotel on horses, caused quite a scene. He put his sheriff's outfit on and walked into the hotel and told them not to serve any more liquor that night, and they confiscated the liquor. Next time he went in there, they served him. The final days of the ocean forest, I've been around the beach a long time, and I was lucky enough to work for a fellow named Sonny Stevens for 6, 7, 8 years. I learned a lot from him. And he got into a lot of things. And one of them, somebody came up and tried to sell him and Dexter Stuckey, who was in the motel business, the ocean forest property. That dog didn't hunt too good, and they kept working on him, and finally they decided to sell it. Their business plan, and I don't know how many people knew this, but I did, they were going to buy it and demolish it instantly and cut it up into 4 parcels and sell it. And that's the way they set up their financing, which was in Atlanta, Georgia, with Great American Mortgage Investors. So they bought the hotel, were going to take it down, and they fell in love with the place. They went through it. They decided they were going to try to operate it, run it, and fix it up. And they had the great Skeeter Nash and George Henry and a few more operating the place. And Stuckey was in that business, and you had Johnny Mack there. They tried to operate it. They brought people down, talk about rebuilding it, refurbishing it. They even had some Marriott people to come down. But they could not get the numbers to work, and the economy was going down. The lenders were after them, and they decided to blow it up. And they brought in the people. The demolition people from several places, and the people that got the bid were the crowd from Atlanta. The night before it blew up, they went in there and placed the charges, the test charges. They went off, and not a thing happened. The demolition man was about to have a heart attack. Sonny, Dexter, everybody was, because they didn't think it was going to come down. One reason it didn't come down well, it was built so good, and that was one of the problems they ran into when they were trying to redo it and get the number of rooms out of it to make it work. But that explosion or series didn't go off. So that night, the demolition people went back there and they worked all night. And when they pushed that plunger the next morning, I was standing there when it worked, and it came down. But that's kind of the one piece of it that I know something about, because I was employed by Sonny, and Dexter was his partner.
When you were talking about liquor, I remember when I was sitting in the ocean forest with Dad, I asked him one time, I said, why can they sell liquor and we can't at the Cozy Corner? And my dad said, because they painted it with an invisible paint. And the sheriff, Shrimp Lewis was the sheriff, he can't find it. So I remember I kept bugging Dad about invisible paint. Why can't we get some at the Cozy Corner and paint the place in invisible paint? Well, he tried to sell liquor after that. So he'd buy 3 bottles of liquor and he'd tell some of his customers, Friday and Saturday, we're going to offer liquor. Well, the sheriff would come, fine him $100, take his 3 bottles. He wasn't good enough friends with the sheriff, because when they came to the Oasis or Behringer's, they would call first. And they would go, we're coming to raid you. And they would hide the liquor. But my dad, he didn't have enough oomph with the sheriff. So he put me on guard duty one Friday and Saturday. There was a garbage can right out in front of the Cozy Corner. So I'm sitting on the garbage can, and he said, as soon as you see the sheriff's car, you run in and you holler in Greek, police, in Greek, which is politsmanos. And I hollered, politsmanos, sheriff comes in. Dad hides the liquor in one of those big coffee urns, and he put 3 bottles in there, and they all sat down and acted like nothing was going on. The sheriff laughed. He couldn't find the liquor. When he left, they went to get the bottles out, and 2 of them had broken when they sank down. So for the next hour, I had a piece of cheesecloth, and I was straining all the coffee in the pots. And the next day, all the locals were sitting around drinking VO and coffee all morning. That's the only thing I remember about liquor back then. Have another question for Jack?
Well, another personal point of privilege regarding Egerton Burroughs. I happened to be in the office that day, Egerton, Sonny Stevens, Dexter Stuckey, and you, and a few others. I happened to have a bill that I was trying to collect from Sonny. But anyway, he was on the phone giving the property away to the demolition people. And I believe that Egerton felt real bad. And I know how bad he felt when the pavilion went down. And I know he had many sleepless nights about destroying this magnificent structure. So when he heard that the train depot was going to be saved, he invited me to lunch. And we had lunch at Mr. Fish. And Egerton said, Jack, what do you need? And I said, I need deep pockets. I need some money to restore the depot. One day it will be a flagship destination in downtown Myrtle Beach. He said, well, let me see what I can do about that. A couple of days later, Doug Wendell came by, and he had a check this big. And of course, I got a photograph of it. Egerton had seen fit to donate $100,000 for the restoration of this train depot. Thank you. Well, I knew the money had to come from
the
somewhere.
ocean forest, you know, we miss it because it was the grandest, most imposing thing we had on the beach. We told directions by the ocean forest. It's 6 blocks north, it's a mile south. And it was our Taj Mahal, all of our growing life. And it was, it could have been our Greenbrier and our Breakers and our, we really don't have a destination hotel here, which is a little bit sad. We have great places, but we don't have too many places where people just come because of the hotel. It could have been that, which is a bit sad. So all of us that grew up here, we do miss that possibility, that we didn't have something like the Breakers have in Palm Beach. And
Well, another point, since we're on a personality phase here, and we got Bo Bryan here, our first poet laureate. Congratulations, Bo. Now that leads me to tell you why the ocean forest fell in disrepair. It's because Bo Bryan's father, George W. Bryan, went way out on the north end and built the Caravel Motel. And the Caravel had big double wide bedrooms, sliding glass doors overlooking the ocean. Now, who would want to stay in a little 8x10 room at the ocean forest when just down the street you could get a suite of 2 bedrooms, sliding glass doors, free golf at the Pine Lakes Country Club and the Dunes, courtesy of George W. Bryan. Bo was a little fella around.
we got to blame it on somebody.
Bo Bryan, deep roots.
Who would have thought that the guy I used to go to the beach club with, walk around the boulevard, and take pictures of everybody in the little moon, and all the little girls. We'd all be standing up here talking.
Thank you very much, Jack and Dino. That was very historic. There's probably not a better word for it than that. To learn firsthand from people who spent time, who saw the naked ladies at the Ocean Forest Hotel. Any other questions for Jack or Dino here? Again, thank you for coming out. We do have Bo Bryan, who's a longtime local and was recently chosen as the city's first poet laureate. And Tina imposed upon Bo to create something for the occasion. So we're about to hear Bo Bryan's first work. Hopefully that's not too much build-up for you, Bo.
I hope not. Hello. Is that working?
And again, somebody who probably needs no introduction to this crowd, Bo Bryan.
I'm standing here because of a conversation I had at the Flamingo Grill with a fellow named Reuben Hyman, who's not here tonight. He's in Nicaragua. But I okayed this story I'm going to tell you with him because I thought it needed to be okayed. Reuben and I had a conversation at the Flamingo at the bar one night in which, this was before Christmas, long before Thanksgiving. Reuben said, you know, we need to remember the ocean forest. He said, every time I drive by that place, I can see it. And I said, well, I can too if I think about it. And he said, well, it deserves a National Historic Marker. And I just kind of screwed my lips up. I said, Reuben, if you're going to memorialize the ocean forest, then build a scale model of it and make it bronze. And Reuben kind of looked at me and he thought, you know, he said, that'd cost $1 million. I said, well, in my land, that's poetic, you know, because the hotel was the $1 million hotel. At any rate, it just kind of flew out of my mind that we had the conversation, except that a fellow named Derek Mazingo, whom some of you all are no doubt familiar with, Derek happened to stop by the bar that night, and Reuben told him that he would be coming to see him on Tuesday about the ocean forest. And so they had that conversation. It flew out of my head, and I didn't think any more about it until about 6 weeks later. I'm at breakfast one Sunday morning, and Reuben comes in and says, well, he says, we're not going to put the bronze effigy of the ocean forest there in the traffic circle. He says, Derek's got another idea. I said, well, what is it? He said, well, it looks kind of like a billboard. And I said, oh, no, you're not taking, you know, I mean, that was too good an idea to turn into a billboard. So I kind of got upset, and Reuben told me that he and Derek were taking the idea to present to city council that coming Tuesday. So I get suited up, you know, and I'm going down there to witness the debacle they're going to sell the city council a billboard of the ocean forest, which was what I had in mind. And Derek and Reuben show up looking like homeless people. I'm not exaggerating. Reuben had on a pair of slack, jersey Bermuda shorts that he works out in, and a wife beater T-shirt. And no, I'm not exaggerating. And Derek Mazingo's hair was all lank, and his wife was trying to get him to go to Morocco, and he hadn't left the office in 3 or 4 days. He looked like he'd been growing in artificial light. And neither one of them looked presentable at all to me. I was kind of embarrassed to be there to witness them. And so they go up in front of council and put on the audio, the visual representation of this thing. Well, it turns out to be not a billboard, but a piece of laminated glass, which is bulletproof glass, only it's like 2 feet thick, and it's 20 feet tall, and it's like 27 feet wide, and it is an exact replica of the ocean forest. It's called a bas-relief. First time I ever pronounced it, I was with some arty people in Charleston. I said, a bass relief. They said, no, it's not a bas relief, it's a bas-relief. It's French. So a bas-relief is a piece of flat surface in which you carve out a three-dimensional image. You've seen it over and over again. The Assyrians did a lot of it. The Greeks did a lot of it. The Romans did a lot of it. It's a bas-relief, two-sided, of the Ocean Forest Hotel. And it's surreal. It's beautiful. I hope to goodness that it doesn't cost too much for them to build, but if it costs $1 million, I told Reuben, I said, we'll get on the internet and raise that money, because that thing deserves, it's gorgeous. I hope they put it there. You'll be proud of it if they do. So I'm going to read you this poem that resulted, I decided after I went to that council meeting, when the poet laureate thing came up, I said, well, council, went right for this thing. I thought, these people are serious. My town is serious about elevating the cultural arts to the status of an economic engine in this town. And that really intrigued me. I've been watching it grow since I was a little boy, my family going back a couple of generations. Anyway, if my mouth doesn't go dry on me, I'm going to read you this poem. It's called Organized for Beauty. The Ocean Forest Hotel was a vision conjured from a pile of bricks, organized for beauty. The illusion of a permanent structure, such as the Great Pyramid still is, and the Parthenon of the Greeks, the Roman Colosseum, and all the rest, the few that do survive in ruins, will someday be completely a once upon a time as the ocean forest is. A dream remembered, a vision conjured by men who dreamed much larger than themselves. The ocean forest, a masterpiece of humankind, surviving in flight upon the arrow of time. The $1 Million Hotel, an icon to the Gilded Age, disappeared, glorified, immortalized by dynamite. You might envision downtown Myrtle Beach as air and spirit to the ocean forest, a blank canvas for decades now, upon which somehow, somewhere, to conjure a new masterpiece to surprise the world. The likes of even a Sydney Opera House, an Eiffel Tower even. But a dynamite dream too large for us, you might say. But then remember, we are not as small as we used to be. Perhaps our time is now to renounce the redneck Riviera, organize the downtown bricks for beauty, and bury dirty Myrtle now and forevermore. Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you very much to Bo Bryan for coming out tonight. Thank you to Dino and Jack Thompson for their history talk tonight. Where'd Dino go? I'm sure they'll hang around, have a chance to chat with them a little bit. See the faucets. Those are fascinating. See some of the pictures here. Again, thank you for turning out. Thank you to Tina and Jennifer for putting this on as part of Chapin Memorial Library's series. We'll see you in February over at the library on the 21st at 2 o'clock. Thank you.